was very important to us that we started with a storyboard so that we had an idea, a real basic idea of how we were going to lay the scenes out, what our shots were going to be, how long they might be.
Susan, what are you doing? We gotta get out of here.
I'm tired of watching my son die.
Susan, we gotta go.
Then we actually take it and the animators will put on our own mocap suit. We'll go out into the parking lot and we'll shoot a version of it ourselves. We'll put that together on temp rigs with temp sets and stuff, and we'll get a good idea of how the scene's gonna look.
And that really gave us the backbone for what we could do when we were going to take the final step into going and shooting the real motion capture with our actors.
We set up in the optical stage and we'll play that back and we'll kind of walk through to show the actors how the cameras are going to work, what the world looks like.
We were shooting the majority of our cinematics at Sony San Diego. We spent a lot of our time in their performance volume, which is a much more concentrated area. It's only about 10 by 10, but it's surrounded by cameras. There's, I think, over 100 cameras. This is the volume that we would use for the full performance data.
In R2 and R1, we did traditional mocap, which was just the body separately from the face. And then what we'd do after that is we'd go into the voiceover booth with the actors, and they would have to essentially sync to what was recorded on the mocap stage. Resistance 3 was different in that we did full performance capture. So they'd have the regular mocap suit on with the markers, but then they'd also get their faces marked up with all kinds of little dots. And then they would also get mic'd up, which was something that we hadn't done before.
Susan, what are you doing? We gotta get out of here.
I'm tired of watching my son die.
Susie, we gotta go.
So essentially what we were capturing was like a stage performance. It was great because the actors were able to work off of each other real time, which is something in the past that we weren't able to do because we would play them the reference from the other actor, but they wouldn't be able to really, kind of feel those emotions and react.
Susan, what are you doing? We gotta get out of here.
I am tired of watching my son die.
Susie, we gotta go. Susan, what are you doing? We gotta get out of here.
I am tired of watching my son die.
Susie, we gotta go.
On the stunt side, what you have is being able to set up the shots, making sure that the stunt is as safe as possible for the guy who's performing it, and also to get that believability across when a guy is falling out of a VTOL. What's that going to feel like? We were working with the data that wasn't full performance. We were able to move into Sony's larger volume. So it's a much, much larger volume. You can carry out a lot more large actions. They also have real time where we can see our sets on screen as our actors are performing in that volume.
We get real-time data, so the actors who are out on the mocap stage in the middle of all those cameras, whenever they move, they can see themselves up there moving.
The first thing that we do is we have to block out exactly where each character is going to stand, how high everything is, if a chair is the right height, if a railing is a certain height in the game, then the railing has to be that height in the volume, so that if a character falls off that railing, we make sure that he's falling from the railing to the floor.
Today we're using it for the most complicated stunt shot we've done so far on Resistance 3. We've got a couple of awesome stuntmen here today. They're going to help us get Capelli through that experience. He's going to tumble out of the VTOL and have to hang from it while Charlie is desperately trying to help him get back in.
And this rope is going to go up over the bar where supposedly I'm going to be hanging from. And some guys are going to be holding it on the other side. So I'll jump out, and when I drop, I won't actually have to use the strength of my hand. I'll be rigged in.
And action! 10! 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Grab the hand! Ah! And cut.
The height that he is actually falling from in the game is way too high for the volume. It's bigger than the top cameras. So what we needed to do is we'll shoot that in different chunks. We shot that as a separate take, and then what we did is, to get the action of him falling, we actually hoisted him all the way up to the ceiling, all the way up to the ceiling of the interior space, and we had him drop onto some crash pads.
Action! All right. You drop when you're ready. And cut.
Once we get all these different pieces all shot, then we put it all together, and that's what ultimately becomes the scene that you're going to see in the game.
Charlie? My family. I'll find them. I promise. Ellis, get us out of here!
Being there on the set, there was so much preparation and safety to make sure that, you know, they wouldn't get hurt. And now when you just see a small clip of a guy, you know, falling, you know, a few feet onto a mat, you're like, wow, that doesn't look that bad. But, you know, we needed to make sure that the guys were safe when they were doing this and that it looked real. So there's a lot of preparation that goes into the stunts, but, you know, I think in the end, it made the game better.
I really had to count on the talent that I had working with me, and we had some tremendous stuntmen working with us down in San Diego. And then on the voice side, I mean, I couldn't ask for a more talented cast. And so again, I really just kind of told them where they needed to be on any given moment, and really just trusted their instincts and their talent to get the performances that really come across in our scenes.
We did a great job in this game of making a character who's very grounded. He has a wife, he has a family. We're telling a much deeper, much more involved story than we've done in the past.
I think with every good Chimeran enemy, the first thing we kind of think about is what is the player experience that we want when they're encountering these enemies.
We definitely wanted it to be more about player choice and for it to feel like the enemy AI was reacting to what the player was doing. And to do that, we wrote something called the job board, basically a tool that designers can use to control how many enemies can be doing what jobs in combat so that they can still have that kind of scripted, good-feeling cinematic battles. And using the job board, they can do things like assign a certain number of defenders, or a certain number of flanking enemies, or a certain number of just straight-out aggressive guys who are going to run after the player and attack. If things felt more random and you just had guys everywhere acting stupid, you can get into situations where you have big difficulty spikes or the difficulty just completely drops out. It can definitely make the player feel like they're fighting a more intelligent foe.
The Grims are, for lack of a better term, almost aborted hybrids. So they're halfway between human, halfway between a hybrid. Malnourished, malfed. That's why they obviously move a little slower. They tend to be more numbers of them, but they're not as smart or as intelligent as a hybrid. They don't use weapons. They just try to melee or throw whatever debris they can find around them. The hybrids are becoming more stronger because it's now their environment, it's getting closer to their homeworld. In R2, we had the hybrids that had a lot more armor to keep them colder and sort of to insulate their bodies, but now that the world is getting colder, the hybrids are tending to wear less armor because it's more like their homeworld. The long legs started as an idea of how can we make a jumping chimera. We had initially some more bird-like creatures, some more dinosaur-looking like creatures. Dialed it back. We designed a very intricate, detailed hydraulic system for his legs that allow him to kind of jump and hover as he's moving around the level.
The Brawler, we wanted to bring back kind of the intensity of the Titans from earlier Resistance, but have them much more agile, have them be able to come down on you really fast.
Almost indestructible. He has weak points which, unless the player shoots those, he isn't going to do any damage to him. He is a melee character who runs around destroying whatever's in his path, including you.
Okay, how do we make that fun? How do you fight that? We don't want it to make it a bullet sponge either. We don't want the player to just kind of sit there and pelt, back up, pelt.
Animation-wise, we wanted to feel like he was moving more like a gorilla, like a silverback gorilla. We didn't want him to feel like just a dude in a suit.
The thing kind of develops on its own in rough form as we're developing the art style, kind of how you make him a Chimeran-looking creature goes part and parcel with how do you make him feel good and fun in a situation. starting to see is Earth is starting to become more and more hospitable to the Chimera as we know it, being colder, it's being terraformed, actively being just destroyed along the way. Having humans in an occupied Earth is a big theme in Resistance 3.
I made a very conscious effort in the visual design of the game to tell the story through color, and as a result, depending on the mood or the feeling that I want the player to get across based on the story, the colors will change. So Haven, which is where the game starts, is very desolate, very sad, not a lot of color, you know, just kind of depressing basically, and that's kind of the mood that we were going for. And then when you get to the boat, we start adding a little bit of green, a little bit of color starts to come in until you eventually get to New York, which is more of our bluish kind of snow level. So it's not really devoid of color, it's more controlled color.
Try to move away from having this large military human forces fighting, and we wanted to give you a sense of the human side of things. We advanced the time a little bit. It takes place 4 years after the events of Resistance 2, and the people that you're fighting with are just kind of regular Joes. What you're dealing with as a player is not going to last very much longer unless something crazy happens. Everywhere you go, you're going to feel threatened. We really wanted to make a big deal out of the fact that the Chimera are here. They've won the war.
I think Marcus Smith, the creative director, and I were both here for Resistance 1. A lot of the team was here for Resistance 1.
We wanted to make a game where we allowed the player to choose the way they play the game, and absolutely the best way to do that is having all your weapons at your disposal.
I just think we just started feeling more comfortable with the idea of, like, we can be our own game. We don't have to do what every other military shooter is doing right now.
That it's just kind of in our company culture at this point to come up with crazy weapons.
It's so hard, like, always thinking of trying to think of new guns. I mean, between Ratchet and Resistance, I don't know how many guns have been through the series. What is going to be different? What else is left? What have we not done?
A lot of times we will go back to the Ratchet weapons and say, okay, it's kind of like this weapon, but we want to obviously make it different for this. The best thing about having such a lineage of having exotic weapons is we can go back through our kind of library of effects and library of functionality and say what worked, what didn't work, and what can we bring to the table here. The reason that we really went with the upgrade system was in Ratchet 2 you had a lot of different weapons, and we discovered that people would tend to kind of have their favorite and just go with it. And what the upgrade system did on a gameplay side was you kind of wanted to experience all the different weapons because you wanted to upgrade them as you went along. So by doing that you learned how good and what the advantages and disadvantages of each weapon were. That was what we brought to the table in R3, was how do we capture that? So we've kind of done it in our own unique way.
What can happen sometimes is that you wind up with a weapon that's really fun to use in a test level, but in the game it's either too slow, too cumbersome, or too difficult to set up, and so the player doesn't wind up using it. Like if you have a choice between using some exotic, difficult to use weapon and just shooting an enemy in the face, if there's no big tangible reward for using the exotic weapon, you're just going to pull out the carbine and keep shooting people.
Programmers and animators and effects guys really stepped up and went from taking these things that when we were prototyping them, they felt okay, but you weren't getting that visceral feedback, and they look fantastic now. They feel fantastic, they're fun to use, and they feel so different from what is in any other game.
That's a big part of the Resistance 3 universe is exotic weapons, and in particular Chimeran technology, and nothing's more fun than blowing stuff up with really big explosive weapons.
Some of the weapons I would say we pushed a little bit farther. Again, like that sort of mantra of, you know, this can only happen in Resistance. I think we've got a really unique mythos in our game.
The Mutator is a good example where they've taken Chimeran technology, humans have, and have crafted a weapon out of it. I think this weapon in particular was pushed a lot by animation. We have an animator on the team, just went with it.
One of our animators here, Steve Ryder, sent out this animatic of human basically coughing up all of this stuff and having it grow out of him and just kind of collapsing to the ground.
The primary fire sort of makes them sick, and they start getting these boils, they start kind of steaming, explode from the inside with these kind of gross pustules and fall to the ground. Get a fully upgraded mutator and throw it out there, you can get some pretty crazy scenarios going on, just watching all these guys running and the other guys blowing up and transforming them, and they go running somewhere else. You can get some pretty awesome chain reactions. The Deadeye is a Chimeran sniper rifle. Primary fire, it's a sniper shot. It's deadly. You want to get the headshot. The secondary fire, you pull the trigger and you've got this sort of wind up that lasts about a second and a half, and this reticle kind of collapses and shoots out this extremely powerful shot. Sniper weapons are an interesting gun to talk about upgrades because it's already such a powerful thing. We added an extra magnification level to the sniper rifle. It's silenced, so you can shoot it without waking guys up instantly. Whenever you go into scope view, we actually have a little effect around guys' heads to help you target and get the headshot. The Atomizer is the gun that the Ravager uses in Resistance 3. You pick it up and it's actually one of the, I think it's the only gun that you can't scope in. It's sort of held down like a minigun or mini turret or something like that. It shoots out an electrical current. It's got maybe a 10 to 12 meter range. And anytime something's pretty close to you, it'll just auto-target them and zap them and actually disintegrates them whenever you kill them. The secondary fire shoots out this gravity well turret, shoots out these sort of lightning bolts, and it actually sucks the enemies into it. It drags them in, picks them up, and they sort of go spinning around. They get a bunch of body parts and a ragdoll or two moving around. It looks pretty awesome.
My personal favorites, I have a lot of them. I really like the Bullseye, I always have. I like the way that it feels right now, and it's always a good weapon of choice for taking out certain types of enemies.
We've got these Chimeran and alien weapons, and one of the things we want to do is sort of give them a flavor unlike anything that human weapons could have. When you pull up the Bullseye, you have this sort of weird, sort of floating holographic iron sight. I think it's one of the first changes people are going to notice.
You have a weapon that's kind of this small SMG style gun. It kind of has a big spread. It has this alt fire where you can tag guys and all of the primary fire will go to that tag. It makes it extremely effective against very fast moving characters. The Bullseye tag, the trail in particular, a lot of times in Resistance 1 and 2, people had a hard time figuring out sort of where their tags were going to go.
Made some changes so that whenever you do tag one, it actually draws this sort of tether line so you can see exactly who you are connected to, and you know when you're connected and not connected. And
it's been a mainstay in the Resistance universe all across the board because it's just such an effective weapon. A big focus of Resistance 3 is, again, to allow players to play the game they want to play. With multiplayer was to have these abilities that you could craft kind of your own play style. Instead of choosing an explicit class, you kind of build your own. So one way to do that was with abilities that you'll you'll be able to earn points for and purchase along the way. They kind of fall into two separate categories. One of them is passive, which means that it happens automatically. So that might be a stat buff that it increases your accuracy from firing from the hip. And then there's the active abilities that are ones that are triggerable during gameplay via the player using the D-pad. All of those abilities can be kind of joined together to help you become a better player at the style of play that you have.
So in MP, it's a little different than SP. You know, in SP, you are leveling weapons by using them, right? And in MP, you are leveling weapons by getting currency. And you get currency by leveling in the game. So as you kill people, you increase levels, and then we give you points to spend. And you can use those points to spend on buying weapons or buying new abilities or upgrading abilities or weapons.
The one I hate the most is a lightning shield, which is, it creates an electrified field around the player, and so if somebody tries to melee them, they will take damage, and inevitably I'm getting caught taking damage, right? Oh, I love melee kills, and they always get me with that damn thing.
Ah, spotter, yeah. Not only selfishly does it let you kind of like focus in on a target and outline a target who may be far away, but once you outline them, all the other players on your team can see that person outlined across the map. The other advantage too is if someone kills that guy who's outlined, you get an assist bonus. Radar decoy, it's more of kind of a trap. I'm gonna like set it right here in this doorway and it'll pop up a decoy. And once you upgrade it, it'll actually have a little proximity mine on it. Someone's like hunting you down thinking they're gonna get that awesome melee kill. They might sneak up and melee the hologram and then kaboom. Patience is a good one. The whole idea is like you're trying to stay aligned with the target. The longer you stay aligned, the higher damage you'll do with your next couple shots. If you have a sniper rifle, 2 shots to the body will kill you. But if you have patience, right, and you wait that couple extra seconds, you could one-shot body shot somebody. And that applies to all weapons. For those people who are like, okay, I know this game in and out, I'm hardcore, you know, I don't even need to have any of these attributes to help me play. I'm gonna take negative attributes. And what they do is they'll reduce something in the game, like give you no HUD. But in exchange for not having a HUD, you get extra XP for killing people. Kind of hardcore, like I can do it all, you know, giving themselves extra challenge. You know, one of the things with a lot of these abilities is not only do we want a variety of combinations, we want a variety of counters. Something like disguise, right? And we have the ability to have something like spotter. So you can be behind enemy lines, like spotting out the bad guys, but blending in is one of them, right? We also have counters to that, which is like someone who has thermal vision will look at you and see like, oh, you're a different dude, you're not one of my friends.
I think one of them that is a favorite is, it's kind of a retribution ability, which is if you die, out of your body springs leapers.
One of those things that, it's a little silly, but it's perfect for our universe.
And those leapers will go out and try to attack your enemies. So you can get post-death kills that way, and that's always a fun one.
Having those leapers pop out and try to run in and attack people, I think is just super fun and super resistant.
We've got 12 weapons in the game. 11 of them are guns. There's one special weapon, the sledgehammer. All the guns have 2 upgrades to them. We imagine on a first playthrough, you'll hit second upgrades on some of the weapons, probably first upgrades on almost all of them.
It's really fun to blow stuff up, and the Magnum is a great example of that, where one of the upgrades is the tags that hit the wall, projectiles that stick on the wall that are explosive will split. Each one of them will have an explosive impulse. When you canvas an area with those, you'll see bodies fly, you'll see body parts fly. You know, it's a gore fest.
So the marksman, with going to iron sights, I think one of the first things returning players from Resistance 2 will notice is that you don't have the scope automatically. When you pull it up, it's an iron sight. It's still very accurate, but it's a little bit shorter range than the marksman in Resistance 2. Secondary fire is a little bit different. It shoots out a little mini turret. It pops out and it'll scan around for enemies. The carbine was an interesting weapon for Resistance 3. We actually said we were pulling the carbine. There's no chance the carbine is going to be in the game. We found that players play with the more exotic weapons tend to really like our game. The weapons are one of the things that we really hang our hat on, and I think the carbine in Resistance 1 and 2 was the kind of weapon that you could, if you wanted to, play through the bulk of the game just using that. At first we were like, no way this gun's making it. We're pulling that out. We're going to make them play with our exotic weapons. And then we went back and forth, and ultimately we got it back in the game. It was a difficult decision of whether or not to keep it or not. Players, again, in that sort of a context that just wouldn't make sense in most other shooters, but that we thought, yeah, this is going to be a really interesting, dramatic, different kind of gameplay that you wouldn't be able to see in a typical military shooter. Got some great effects on guys whenever you're hitting with a sledgehammer. It's got some good weight behind it. I don't think it's necessarily like the best strategic use all the time, but it's just fun. It's exciting to be like, all right, I'm going to go in for the vicious kill. Can I get away with it?
I think all of our weapons, we really are trying to hit the sweet spot of not just how are we going to make this a challenge, but how are we going to make this fun. That shotgun upgrade is, as you say, it's a game changer.
The first upgrade, it sort of adds this incendiary flavor to the shotgun shells. The smaller guys like Grims and hybrids, usually with just one shot, you can set them aflame and watch them burn out.
It completely destroys most of our setups, but it's awesome, so we're going to keep it in. Joseph Capelli, our hero, the last Sentinel, lives in Haven, Oklahoma with his family, and their primary strategy for surviving the occupation of the Chimera is to hide, to stay hidden, to avoid contact. And unfortunately, during the course of this level, you'll see that you've been found out. A Chimeran terraformer, which is this massive beam from the sky, is descending upon the town. So the winds are whipping. It's so massive it creates its own weather patterns, and you will see a lot of wind and experience the whipping nature of that as the terraformer descends.
In one of these sections in the Haven Town defense, you're in a junkyard and a new character is introed, which is the Longlegs. They have the ability to jump real high and jump all over the place. And one of the big feelings we wanted to create just in this environment, not only with these characters, but with the standard hybrids, is just the sense of just having to survive. We try to build these spaces a little different than R2 and give them lots of options. You know, you can go up high to the top of a building, you can fight from the ground, and you're just fighting these guys off and trying to hold them back so the rest of town can escape.
At the beginning of the game, this is really the Wizard of Oz setup. This is the hurricane happening.
They're just chasing you back to the center of town. You're fighting them off, and they're bringing in more drop ships, and it's just like the whole Chimeran force is just coming down on the player right then and there.
You have a certain gaming paradigm involved when you're fighting those hybrids. You're looking for cover. You're trying to move from cover to cover to shoot these things that are trying to pin you down. This is the complete opposite of having to deal with the whole. Well, oftentimes it starts off with the designer coming up to me and telling me what their needs are. For this particular design, it was Cameron. So he would come to me and tell me what the gameplay is going to be like, the particular powers of it, and then I have to make that fit within the matrix of Chimeran lore and Chimeran design. So I did the initial drawings, and I did a bunch of different heads. Some way more alien, much more original, much stranger. But the stranger ones weren't working because it didn't feel like part of the Chimeran ecology. So I had to dial it back to what we had essentially, which is a giant Chimeran gorilla.
this case, his particular heat stacks were actually located on his chest and on his shoulders. And so that's why, you know, when he overheat, he rips it off, showcasing like the damages that was done underneath. And it's one of those characters that he changes state from, like, you know, goes on all fours, climbing on things and stuff like that, which is pretty cool.
Not only did we want him smashing through the environment, a lot of his attacks are like fire-based air fuel attacks. So he has an air fuel grenade that he can launch out. He can run and stand on top of buildings and fire a barrage of air fuel grenades out. If you get close to him, he'll do a double fist, like smash into the ground and create a big area of effect fire blast. If the player gets close to the Hulk too, and like gets punched by the Hulk, you can get knocked into walls, into cars, and all kinds of stuff. So we really want to make this guy up in your face visceral more than a lot of the other characters that fight at ranged.
This fight in Haven is from sort of the opening level of the game, and it really sets the tone for you in this world that is, it's dangerous. You're vastly outnumbered, and there's never really an opportunity to feel safe. This is the first step in your journey from Haven, Oklahoma to New York, and as such we wanted to make it a mysterious aspect. Oh my God. We're all gonna die! Start over. Our goal with the boat level was really, we wanted to have actual movement from place to place, actual traversal, since this is a journey game.
The theme for Resistance 3 is actually that of kind of a buddy road movie. So we very secretively and very purposefully put bits of artwork in a level, whether it's an overpass, a gas station, a motel, things that you see and feel when you're on a road trip. Now in 2010 Safe America.
And our goal was to make this, since it's the beginning of the journey, make it really mysterious and kind of take the player through a ride where they would experience kind of environmental storytelling to a level that we really can't do when players are just running through.
Look, Joseph, straight ahead.
The boat level in Resistance 3 has a couple of responsibilities. The responsibility of describing the spaces between the more static levels that you visit.
And so after they leave Haven, they come across a boat and they start traveling on a river, and they run into kind of the Mississippi, and they run into this town.
Oddly enough, there is a town that would be great if it was underwater named Venice, right next to the mighty Mississippi. So this wonderful little town named Venice. We actually thought about naming this town to Venice, but we thought that'd be too bad of a joke, but it matches perfectly.
It's Wrightsburg, Missouri, which is a made-up town. It's definitely a change of pace because you've just gotten out of levels where it's crazy, intense combat, so it's like, take a breather and like give you time to take in the surroundings. So this is your first time out of Haven, sort of seeing what the states look like after, Khmeran occupation. It's based a little bit on Louisville because of just all the reference I took from there.
In the Resistance 3 boat level, we actually have this huge climactic bridge crunching sequence that was kind of a technical challenge. We wanted to make sure the bridges felt right, looked right. So she went on location and took some pretty fantastic pictures of the underside of this famous bridge where she's from.
So this was the water level in the 1930 flood was above this pylon. So this is like right at the base. So basically the water level was like way up at the top of the bridge. So we sort of use that as a reference for how close the bridge is to the water.
The environmental storytelling was really important to us. Right off the bat, Craig Goodman, one of our environment leads, really took charge and just started coming up with this elaborate backstory about this town that had been evacuated.
We also wanted you to feel lost and sad because we are in a ruined America. And the most optimistic moment in a year is just before Christmas.
Because it really sort of ties it back to like humanity and the sense of humanity and what was once normal and is now like overrun.
And you pick up on this as you go through the town, and it has a lot of character. and there is something there. You can feel this kind of history. One of the really cool things about this backstory is the fact that it resonates and kind of supports the kind of meta story that R3 tells, and that is a group of survivors kind of following them on a almost day-to-day basis as they exist in this fallen apocalyptic world.
And so that kind of story, that kind of feeling of this being a real place, really allowed us all to gel around and make decisions as the level progressed, and to make it feel like a home that people had lived in, and a home that is now lost.